This podcast series is supported by members at Patreon. If you want to support this podcast series, head to patreon.com/Cascadian Beer. Welcome to the Cascadian Beer Podcast. My name's Aaron and I'm a Cascadian. I have a background in radio and television broadcasting. I'm a music producer and have a passion for beer. I don't consider myself an expert in beer by any means, but I do enjoy and respect the craft and the passion of the craft beer industry. Cascadia is a bioregion in the Pacific Northwest on the North American continent. It's made up of the U.S. states of Washington and Oregon, as well as the Canadian province of British Columbia. In this podcast series, I profile the unique breweries of Cascadia, a region that has a strong presence in the international beer scene. If this is your first time here, welcome. I do hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please feel free to share with your friends, and be sure to hit subscribe in your favorite podcast app. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll never miss an episode. In this episode, I'm in Seattle, Washington, a brewery first of its kind in the state. Bike Cooperative Brewery has had their doors open for 4 years now, and they're dedicated to crafting great beer and sourcing it all from their local members. I sat down with the board president and their brewmaster.
My name is Austin Rood, and I'm the board president of Bike Cooperative Brewery here in Seattle, Washington.
And I am Kevin Forhan. I am the head brewer of the Flying Bike.
Now, Flying Bike. Now, I do need to put an interesting story here, because apart from many reasons why I'm here, I received an email with an audio demo from you, Austin.
Yeah.
And you're the first brewery ever to just whip out his phone, record an audio thing, and email it to me.
You have that on your website.
I know.
I was doing you right.
I know. Thank you for reading.
Yeah. Does no one do that?
Nobody.
Really?
You're the first one.
My goodness.
It's only taken me 65 episodes.
Only 65 episodes. I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Hi, Aaron. My name is Austin Rood. I am a longtime listener of your podcast and the current board president of Bike Cooperative Brewery. I'm obviously biased, but I think that our brewery and the way that we run it are unique and could be an interesting listen for your subscribers. There's a lot more to tell about Flying Bike and its history, and I think we have a compelling story. I hope you'd be interested in sharing this with your listeners. Thanks.
Here we are. We're in Seattle. Beautiful space downstairs. Whereabouts in town are we? What's the neighborhood called?
The neighborhood is called Greenwood. We're located about, I would say, 3 miles north of downtown Seattle. We're about a little bit northeast of Green Lake, if you know where that is.
About 6-minute drive from the freeway there.
Yeah.
So that's what it took me. So,
yeah, it sounds about right. We are a bit north of what I would call like the brewery, the Ballard Brewery District, where there's, the 14, the Rubens, the Stoops, Urban Families, that's in that neighborhood as well. But yeah, so we're in Greenwood, where we comprise the Greenwood Brewery District.
Greenwood Central Brewing District.
Yeah.
We call it.
That's the actual name, right? The actual.
That's the official name, by which I mean completely informal and unofficial.
So how long has this place been established?
We've been open since 2015, August 2015. So we're coming up on our 4th anniversary here. But the idea of this brewery came about in 2010. So we've had this kind of cooking for a very long time.
And listeners of the podcast will know it takes a while to open a brewery.
Oh, it sure does.
Yeah.
But there's way more to this story than that.
Oh, yeah.
It's
just,
what is it, 12 years, 10 years?
It was 2010. You don't want me to just I can just.
Yeah, let's hear the story.
Let's just go right into it.
So I had to go through our archives because I do have to tell this story from time to time. But in 2010, a man named Jeff Hicks, who is member number 1 in the brewery, he put up I want to say like a Craigslist ad or something like that, saying that he wanted to get a few folks together to pitch the idea of a cooperative brewery. So this was, mid 2010. And he held that meeting in front of 35 people and pitched this idea of having the Disneyland of beer and wanting to raise $1 million to make this Disneyland of beer. And I think over the next I don't know, 7 months until they incorporated in early 2011. I think they maybe just scaled back that to just like a regular craft brewery, the model that you've kind of see today. But they were meeting all over Seattle, including the Houndstooth Pub, which is right across the street. So it was kind of interesting that they were meeting all around this neighborhood, but didn't really know that they were going to end up in this space. Mm-hmm. And in mid 2011, they were approached by a brewery called Three Skulls, who is down in South Seattle, and they wanted to sell to the co-op. By that time, they had incorporated. They have their 9 board members, and then they vote 5-4 not to buy this brewery. And the very next day, they had their first general meeting at this brewery, mm-hmm. Who brewed their beer for this general meeting. So it was a little bit awkward,
just a little
awkward. And because of the 5-4 vote, Jeff Hicks, who the person who came up with this idea, he quit the board, quit Flying Bike. So from that time on, we've never had really a member number 1. We've had member number 2 and forward.
Member 1.2.3.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Members number 2, number 3. That's Sean Becker, who was our former board president, and Brian, who is also on the board. He's also now our co-op coordinator. He does all of our admin work.
And so then what happened from there? Like Jeff leaves, and then like who the momentum's still going.
What happened, right? So from 2011 to 2000, I would say the beginning of 2015, they were going through and getting members. They got to even go back in time a little bit. They got the first 300 members in the spring of 2011 very quickly. Those people are called the Thirsty 300 around here. And over the years, they were building up membership. They were trying to, gain kind of exposure around town. And they would do that in the form of going to beer events. They would hold homebrew days. They would also hold, what they would do is they would partner with local breweries who were opening. And they'd be like, hey, do you need do you need 100 folks to come out and be like your soft opening testers? So for a while, we were doing that. We were going to certain breweries. I think we did that with Peddler. Maybe Rooftop.
But also our beers were on the market because we were partnering with breweries to make our beer. And
that's correct too.
Yeah. So Flying Bike existed as an entity, a legal entity, if you will, before it had a brewery of its own. So a lot of the members of the co-op, needless to say, are home brewers. Mm-hmm. And so early on, long before I was involved, great home brewers were getting together and kind of competing and comparing notes and coming up with the great representative beers of styles and coming up with names and having them brewed and putting them on the market, brewed by different local breweries. There were, half a dozen?
So that'd be like contract brewed, or would it be like a nomadic brew where the home brewer would go?
I would say nomadic brewing is probably the more...
contract brewing has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
Partnering with our friends.
Yes. But it was still the homebrewers making those recipes, right?
Absolutely.
So
and we keep that tradition in the brewery today. So every year we hold 4 homebrew competitions, and the winner of those competitions gets their recipe scaled up and brewed on our system. So 2 of the beers that you have in front of you, the Gose and the Stout, were member recipes.
Who brewed the Stout?
The Stout is my wife's recipe,
right?
For a coffee stout. So,
okay. Looking forward to getting to that one.
Yeah,
yeah.
And the Gose was an iron brewer competition. It was kind of an open competition. You had to use 3 of these 6 ingredients. So this is kind of and this is Eric Bloom who won that competition as well. So it was we source a lot of our recipes from our members. That's something that's been kind of
cooperative. Yep.
Yeah, but Kevin does, I would say, the bulk of like our beer making,
right?
As far as recipe.
Yes, as we continue to acquire member recipes, and these home brewers are very serious. Mm-hmm. Great brewers. I learn a lot from them.
And you get told off if you don't make it just right?
It's, for those interested in brewing, I'm sure many of your listeners are, the challenge of having a great home brewer come in who has brewed a 5-gallon or 12-gallon recipe and scaling up to 7 barrels is a really frightening and entertaining technical challenge.
Right.
I have learned the word nonlinear. But I just wanted to make sure that we understood that Flying Bike was selling beer in the market occasionally before we had a brewery. So it led up to the foundation, the acquisition of the building and the brewery and a brewer eventually, which
absolutely.
is a good story.
Yeah. So we finally acquired this space in late 2014, and we were we had been searching around all types of neighborhoods. We were searching around Pioneer Square downtown, Capitol Hill, also in kind of the downtown area, in Ballard, of course. And we found this place, and we ended up loving it, and we gutted the place, and we have pictures up on our website about it. But we were building this out. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to Kevin, because this is the story. This is like his origination story of the brewery. But we were building it out, and it must have been April or May of 2015, or was it earlier than that?
It was earlier than April, I believe.
Oh, okay. So March, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And you were at the RAM previously.
So I'll just
So before we get to there, I'll ask you my favorite question, which is how did beer find you?
Oh, okay. Do you have an hour and a half?
Yeah.
No, I have shorter versions. I started homebrewing in my late 20s in the 80s. Fell in love with it. Some friends of mine came over and said, we're gonna teach you how to homebrew, and they made a mess in my kitchen, and I was kind of resentful because I thought it was presumptuous, and they did make a mess. And in the middle of the morning, I heard this plop, plop, plop sound, and I went out and I saw it fermenting in my kitchen, and I've never gotten over it. That's literally true. I just have never gotten over it.
And what beer was that?
It was a porter.
Okay.
You start with the porters and stouts when you're a home brewer in the 80s because it's more forgiving. It was a long time ago.
My first was a Munich lager. So.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
No, wrong.
Well, it came out great.
Oh,
so
okay,
it was first time lucky, believe me. Second one wasn't so great.
All right. I stand corrected.
Okay.
It's like golf. That first day, you have one day that's good, and then you spend the rest of your life.
That's just kind of everything, though, right?
Yeah. So, kind of to cut the story short, I used to buy my ingredients downtown. There's a Liberty Malt Supply, was a homebrew shop on Western Avenue here in Seattle, near the waterfront where I worked. And one day, I went in there to buy supplies, and they were doing something in the back, and they said, "Oh, we're building a little brewery." Nowadays, it's unsurprising. Mm-hmm. But that was like, are you kidding? There were 5 or 6 breweries in the state at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mostly big, right?
Well, there were, I didn't even count the big guys, Olympia and Rainier, late lamented. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about Thomas Kemper, Grants, Hart, Pyramid, Red Hook.
Yep.
There must be 2 I'm forgetting. Hales, I think, might have been going by then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's about it. Okay, some people will, say, how could you forget this and this? But now where are we at? 7? That's about it. And then there's this. So Charles Finkel, and founder of Merchant Devon, who was a beer importer, started this brewery, Pike Place, down on Western Avenue. Tiny little thing. So I just asked them to hire me, and they eventually did. And I learned to brew professionally on the job. I worked there for 7 years. That was in 1990. I began brewing for them, or working for them, and eventually brewing. Became the head brewer of Big Time Brewery, Seattle's oldest brew pub in the University District in 97. Worked there for 7 years. Left the country for a couple of years and came back and worked for my friend Dick Cantwell, who I worked with at Pike, and started at Elysian Fields, their original head brewer down by the stadiums, and then went to work for the Ram Company for another 7 years. This is a story I believe that Austin is alluding to. So I'm at the Ram, which is a wonderful job, a great company, much maligned, but I always defend them. A great company that gives their brewers freedom, and they have a lot of great brewers making great beer there. And need not apologize. Just because it's in the mall doesn't mean it's not a real brewery. Real
to the
beer.
mall. It's next to. It's not in the mall. It's not like a food court.
Yeah, it's about 12 feet separation.
Yeah.
It's not next to the Orange Julius.
So I knew that Flying Bike was looking for a brewer. I didn't know anything about it. I was mildly curious. I was driving home one day and I thought, well, I'll turn around because I know where this address is. I'll just go look in the window. Came down and looked in the window, and these poor people, from their perspective, they spent all day. It was a very, very long day. They were just ready to be done. And I come and, I'm looking in the window and say, well, let's let the guy in. And I just started to talk to them. And it's hard for me not to be interested when I walk into a room that has an open trench drain that they're just starting to dig. and looking to build the slab for the brew house, how could I not be intrigued? And the more I talked to them, the more I thought I wanted to be a part of it for many, many reasons that turned out to be good reasons.
And so here we are today.
And now here we are.
Right. So Flying Bike, what does Flying Bike focus on generally in terms of beers, or is it just kind of a free-for-all of styles?
It's a good question. We have a 7-barrel brewery. The emphasis is on involving membership. It's something we have worked on from the beginning, even before we had this brew house, a brewery to make beer on. We want a balance of beers available. We have a good range, we have a lot of faucets that we can fill, which gives us the ability to brew all kinds of different beers. And as you can imagine, if we have an array of great home brewers who want to contribute, we're not going to tell them that we only do X or X or X style of beer.
Right.
And I really think that any decent, tasting room or brew pub, however you want to designate it, should have a wide range, especially this day and age.
Yeah.
You got to have your act together and show that you can do everything. And we're beautifully set up to do everything because we have all this talent to draw on. So, my specialty is ales. I like hops, but, that's where I start and branch off from there. We have a great assistant brewer, Jesse Young, who brings tremendous interest, enthusiasm and knowledge about brewing. So he's kind of he's been here for about a year, and he brings a lot of inspiration as well. And the main inspiration is from our membership and our customers, many of whom, but a third every day, a third of the people that come in are members. I've worked for a lot of breweries. I've worked for a lot of brew pubs and, made a lot of beer for a lot of people. I really appreciate that our clientele, because of the nature of the co-op, are tremendously sophisticated and knowledgeable and serious about beer. The kind of people that come in and say, what's new? Yeah. The kind of people who come in and say, a Goza, wonderful. Thank you for doing that. I don't have to explain what it is because they know. Yeah. How many brew pubs are there where most people who walk in know what a Goza is? Mm-hmm. So that's just one example. So as far as what we're emphasizing, what we're trying to do a wide range of things well, and to continue to expand that and explore variations on established styles and maybe even the establishment of some.
So to that then, do you have a core lineup of beers, or is that just really just constantly changing?
We do have... Well, our core is our Rainmaker IPA, which is our house IPA. Beyond that, we have mostly member recipes that have become sort of the old standbys that come and go, but they reappear often. Mm-hmm. So we'll have, for instance, the stout that we discussed. Austin's wife's a great home brewer. Austin is a great home brewer as well. They kind of... I wonder what those discussions at home smell like. It's a coffee milk stout that comes and goes. That's an old standby. There are several others I could name. One of our sort of perennial competition winning members is Eric Bloom, who has contributed a great Kolsch recipe and did the Goza recipe that I was just thinking about, and some others. The porter. Yeah, thank you. So the porter's actually a great example.
Yeah, the porter. We won gold for that porter. So I think that was last summer. We got 2 medals, and one was for one of a brown that you did, and the other was the porter.
Yeah, the Washington Beer Awards. Yeah. So briefly, the Rainmaker is always there. There are sort of solid home brewer member recipes that come and go. And then there are sort of styles that sometimes I take over, like an amber. You should always have something that's like an amber. So I sort of take charge of that at this point until we have our, amber competition, and I'll get some kind of solid recipe from a member, and that'll take.
I think you're doing pretty good on that.
Yeah, that's true. I would say.
I've felt like a lot of the ambers that you've done, the ambers and browns that you've done, have been great.
I agree. I've really enjoyed both of those, especially the browns. Once I discovered that British brown malt, I can't leave alone. That you just put the bag of that in there and half your work's done.
Right. So, Austin, how was opening then? As you already had quite a few members, right? So how was the reception from the local community then?
I think that we, most... And I'll have to caveat that, I am member number 1663. So I got involved actually pretty late in the game. I wasn't I wasn't here for our opening. So this is all kind of like, hearsay.
You're the new guy.
I am the new guy.
Right.
But I think that we had tremendous amount of interest because we were like the first co-op brewery in Washington, West Coast, still in the Pacific Northwest right now. And so I think that people were coming down to try to figure out what we were about. And I don't know if you can speak to like we had a couple of soft openings. We had an opening in like May of 2015, I believe, like the thing that you like had a tour of the brew house. But we had 1,500 members even before we opened the doors. So I think that I think that people really wanted to see what was going on. They wanted to see if,
I've signed up.
Yeah.
Where is it? Yeah.
I've signed up. I want to see this, I want to see this open. Everything that I've seen and heard about that has been, we were
there was a lot of interest from everybody, the already established members and the greater brewing community were interested. And we were a new brewery and we were a co-op and even established brewers and appreciators of craft brew were just very interested in the notion of the co-op.
And I think, also that it's your place. Like, I think it's, Kevin is a veteran, right? He's been doing this since 1990. And one of the things that I think that we really benefit from his connections. His friend Dick Cantwell, for instance, like he calls up Dick Cantwell I'm like, I'm blown away by the fact he says it so nonchalantly. But it is. Yeah. I mean, that's really the case with Kevin. He has all of these connections around town, all of these really just, I wouldn't say old, like ancient connections, just like, decades of these connections that you have with other brewers in town. And we are so lucky to have that by proxy.
I am one of the old guys is what I think Austin is trying not to say. And it does help because, as I said, when I started, there weren't that many of us. And the brewing community around here, as not that different from a lot of other brewing communities. We've really stuck together. We support each other. So you end up knowing a lot of people and they help you and we help each other. So I would say that I have been able to bring that.
So where does Flying Bike go from here, really?
I think that's a really good question because I think that, in the infancy of your brewery, and I think that most breweries go through this, right? There's a lot of interest the first couple of years, and then there's the drop off kind of year 3. And I think that the bike is really I guess let me back up. I think that we are trying to prove that the co-op model for a brewery is something that is viable and can exist. Yeah. So for us to we are like knocking on the door of being profitable. And I think for a business that's been around 3+ years, I think we're kind of right on target as far as that goes. We don't have any loans to service. We're kind of free of all of those things. And I think it's really right now about spreading our message. I think that when I've poured at festivals for Flying Bike, people don't realize that we exist. We're in Greenwood and we're not surrounded by other breweries, just like the breweries down in Ballard. But I think that people finding out about this place and this place exists, and the sense of community I think that we're trying to foster here at Flying Bike, I think we're just starting to tap into that. And I certainly think that we're starting to tap into it this year. I mean, our sales have been great in 2019. And I think that we're getting over that hump, that kind of sophomore slump that a lot of businesses, a lot of breweries go through in their first few years of operation. So I'm really excited about what we're doing here and the trajectory of what we're going to do in the future.
Right. So, I mean, Kevin did bring up a good point. Because I'm just curious, do you and your wife hide your sparge temperatures, so you don't share that information there? Is there that kind of homebrew competitiveness going in there?
She is very selective about the beers that she chooses to brew. Mm-hmm. And I think that Kevin is borne the brunt of some of that. He's she's hardcore. Yeah.
A lot of these homebrewers come in and say, "Oh, it's fine. Whatever you say." It's like, she's not like that.
No, she's when she won, I think that she's very particular about the ingredients that went into
There's
that
a reason
beer.
Her beers are great.
Yeah. So, and she has some very specific ideas on what she likes. I love that about her, that she's willing to, she comes in here and like talks to Kevin and she doesn't apologize for what she likes. At home, I brew everything. You know, I mean, I and when I say everything, like I don't have any specific style. It's kind of what I'm feeling, what I think that we should do. But she's very specific about the things that she homebrews.
Well, I did have 4, and there's now 3 beers in front of me. So kind of walk through this, painting a word picture here. So this first beer, what was this, Kevin? And it was delicious. I finished it, but
that's the German lager with Bavarian lager strain. And when I first brewed it, the batch before this, we did do a cask version of it, which we thought of as a Keller / Zwickel beer for the cask festival here in Seattle, which is a yearly thing. So I call it a Zwickel beer. There may be some of your listeners that are objecting that I'm misusing the word, but my research tells me it's just unfiltered lager, sometimes poured a little young. So I'm just going to take it, especially since I'm so proud of having thought of the name Flying Bike Zwickel. Right. So it's too good a name to apologize for having misnamed the style. So it's our Flying Bike Zwickel. It's a light German lager, essentially. Mm-hmm.
And you're saying that yeast strain is really rapid, like kind of shorter.
It's user-friendly, I have found.
Yeah.
I like that word. I got to use that word to describe yeasts in the future. User-friendly.
Yeah. And, it's hard to do lagers lagers take time. And often in a little brewery, a craft brewery, where you're kind of on a schedule trying to make beer in quantity, there's no place to put it in the corner and leave it alone for 2 months. So you need your yeast to be your friend.
Yep. So the second one here, Austin, how would you describe that color?
I would describe the color as juicy. Like I would say, that's really what I see when I look at that beer. I saw that a couple nights ago when I was here, and the hazy was for some reason it almost was hazier than it is now. But
it's hazy, but it's not like that thick, like orange juice carton, like bright yellow kind of thing that some hazy beers are.
Yeah,
like there's a bit of depth to it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then what beer is this?
This is the Willowile Hazy IPA. We've been brewing what we've kind of settled on, and I don't know if this will continue. And just like Kevin says, it's every time someone comes in here, we have something new on tap, and I've loved that about this brewery. Right now, we've kind of settled on a bigger hazy, something in the 6 to 7% range, and then kind of a lower alcohol hazy in the 4 to 5% range. So this is our bigger hazy, I would say. And Jesse's been really instrumental in helping us kind of up our hazy game, I would think.
Yes, he has, and we've worked a lot. And hazes are the thing. Unlike many brewers, I do not object to the style. I think they're delicious. It's what I drink. I love brewing them.
Well, they're becoming more refined now, right? Like I think it was so new that nobody quite knew how to really dial it in.
I think it still is that way. It's not dialed in. And you're exactly right. And here we've kind of established a way, practically speaking, to be able to brew these beers in this brewery. And we've kind of evolved our own take on it, which is what some other people are doing. Yep. It's a little more bitterness going on, a little drier, not quite as sort of, some of the moving away from the juicy name into the hazy name. So it's not necessarily so thick and sweet and juicy that you love it. Of course, it's incredibly delicious, but when you're halfway through that pint, you kind of wonder if you want to have another one. So it's just a little bit drier, and a lot of people are moving that way. And so we have, as Austin said, we've settled into practice of having 2 hazes available, one quite low alcohol, which I want to pursue this. I love the idea of a hazy session.
Yeah.
I would love to now we're down flirting at 5, even into the high 4s, low 4s as percentage. I'd like to get into the 3s. I was just thinking about this the other day. Why not? That beer does not need alcohol in it particularly.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like the perfect barbecue beer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about a low alcohol beer being too thin in body. When it's a hazy, you just load it up. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit, going off on my nerdy technical brewer thing.
I'm sure there's some that are listening that appreciate this.
All right, good. And then we kind of counter that by having a more or less 6.8% hazy IPA. That's the one we play with the hops a lot. Our little session-y hazy. It's mostly El Dorado and Mosaic.
Right. Now, the next one here, both of you have been talking this up like nothing. This is the Goza. So,
yeah. So this is a member winning beer.
The nose already, I'm like, yes, please.
Yeah. So we had a competition where you had to use 6 ingredients, and this was a member competition last fall. And I think Eric was it 2? No, it was 3. I think Eric used 4 of the ingredients in this. So it contains sage. It contains
blackberry, spruce tip, sage, and coriander.
Yeah. So he put together, I think he had a great recipe. He's a great brewer. And I think the Gose is special and arrived just in time. I think for something that's spruce tips, where you're harvesting spruce tips in May, late April, that kind of thing, to have something like this that's refreshing, it's nice for summer. I'm really looking forward to having it all summer.
And like the nose on it, it's like first I get the spruce tips, but then the sage kind of comes in after that, which is very interesting. So
this is one of those things where my eyes get really wide. It's like, here it is, Kevin. Here's your winning recipe. All you got to do is brew a blackberry, spruce tip, sage, coriander, kettle sour Goza. Could you do that right away, please?
No, good luck.
Yeah. So with the incredible help of Jesse and, of course, Eric Bloom, the brewer who came into the winning brewer, and he came in and helped us. It's not his first winning recipe. We have a kind of a partnership going at this point. We pulled it off, and boy, it was a long process of figuring out how to do all of these things. Spruce tips
But that's the scale problem, right?
It is very much a scaling problem. But it's also, where do you get 5 pounds of fresh spruce tips? And just one word, Etsy.
Okay, right.
Etsy.
The brewer's magic warehouse. All right, finally coming to the last one here on my little flight. Your wife's coffee stout.
So the coffee stout, and I'm going off the one that she won with, but it's made with local coffee from Broadcast Coffee and local grain. So we buy for, at least for this recipe. I don't know if I don't know the grain bill on some of these other ones, but the grain bill comes from Skagit Valley malting.
Yep.
So
great guys up there.
Yeah. As a home brewer, I personally love using their malts, but and that's why this was kind of chosen. It was we kind of had some Maris Otter in mind, but so the whole coffee recipe, the whole coffee stout recipe was really made to sort of have this bright coffee balanced off with a lot of the roastiness that's happening in the stout and the lactose that you have to add. So it was a fun beer to brew, and I think it's actually extremely versatile. They've added chocolate over the years. They've put it on nitro. They've done it without the coffee and just in the milk stout. I've done versions where you goose up the grain bill and you make an imperial version of it. I'm sure you could add chocolate or I don't know, orange or
some orange in this would be nice.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a special recipe. They put this in bourbon barrels, and we've done a really special like barrel aged version of it. So I think I love this beer.
I love it,
and a lot of our members do too. I mean, though my wife is not in the brewery, not on a weekly basis, not certainly as much as I am, but they will come and track her down and tell her how good this beer is. So she's sort of a local celebrity.
It's a very sturdy recipe, and we have played multiple variations on it. None of them without your wife's explicit permission.
Get that on record. Yeah. If somebody wants to become a member here, how do they do that?
It's actually quite easy. You can sign up through our website. So we have really 2 membership options. We have a lifetime membership, which is $200, and it gets you kind of a variety of benefits. $2 off growler fills, $1 off growler fills, $2 off pints in the brewery. And we have these exclusive member events, tasting events around the brewery. You can buy grain for discounted. We came from home brewers, so a lot of the discounts are kind of home brewer friendly.
Kind of a nod back to the community. Right?
It is. We also have happy hour pints every day until 7:00. we like to think it's more than just a mug club. You do get a lot with your $200. So that's lifetime. That's not a yearly thing. We also have a membership, a joining membership program that you can pay $50 and then pay your membership in installments over, however you can afford it until you get up to the $200, and then you're a full member. So you can sign up through our website, flyingbike.coop, or you can sign up through the bar downstairs. That's also another way. But most of our membership comes from our website.
Sweet. Kevin, what'd be some advice that you could give homebrewers to make better beer? Like just a couple simple tips there.
Yeah, I don't think anything I have to say would be a surprise to a homebrewer. The difficulties at home have to do with temperature control of fermentation, adequate yeast pitching, and oxygenating. That's like 1, 2, and 3. And when you have a homebrew and it's not quite right, often it comes down to one of those things. So get a good yeast pitch, whether you do it yourself. Don't be afraid to visit your local brewery. Be nice to them. Don't bother them. Contact them ahead of time. You might get to the point you'll bring in a little sanitized yeast jar and get a perfect 2-pint pitch, and your problems are over as far as that concerns. That's concerned. Oxygen is also difficult. I mean, picking up your carboy and shaking it actually does work, but there are things that you can acquire that allow you to inject oxygen or filtered air into your wort as you're transferring into your fermenter. And the other is control of that fermentation temperature. It's, I have the advantage of glycol jacketed tanks. It's a wonderful thing to have as a brewer. I just set the temperature of my fermentation and go home. Boy, it would be great if you could do that at home. And there are certain tricks. And what I did as a home brewer, I used to just pick up my carboy and I put it in a big Rubbermaid container, which I filled with water. And I would control the temperature of that water, which you could do by heating it or cooling it, both of which can be done. So those 3 things, if you're looking to take the next step, do those 3.
And if somebody was wanting to open up a brewery for themselves, what would be some advice you could give them?
Don't!
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Be prepared. Know who your customers are going to be. Get a business plan. Be realistic. This is the business side of it, which is not my side of it. Austin knows more. But I will say that because I've known so many of my friends who have done this, what happens is you underestimate by 1/3 to 1/2 how much money you're going to need, so that you're 2/3 of the way there, but you run out of money, and that's a failure. Or you have too much confidence that you're going to be able to maintain your timeline, and inevitably there will be a delay. It's often a year, and that's a really long time. You're frustrated, you're doubting yourself, and you're bleeding money.
You're paying rent on a place that you make money off of. Yeah,
paying a brewer who's not brewing. You're paying all kinds of things. So, and it happens over and over and over again. Take it seriously. That's the business side of it. It's not all fun. Just be prepared.
Anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I would say, the old adage is double the amount that you've budgeted and double the time, or triple the time that it takes. We opened from the time we signed this lease till we opened, that was 8 months, and I think that was quite
that was spectacular.
Yeah. And we had 100 people from which to build from, build out this brewery. So that's what Flying Bike is so blessed with, is the fact that we have so many members that something goes wrong in the brewery, when we had the whole keg washer situation, they came over and fixed it. Right. We asked our trusted members, and they came over and fixed that. So it's great to have connections, people who can do that sort of thing. People who are accountants. I'm a CPA by day, and your lawyers, your 3. So if you have to have those people in your back pocket. You have to have friends or people who really know that, because 95% of it's not brewing. Really, right? It is doing paperwork, paying your taxes, working with, if you music licensing, talking to it has nothing to do with operating, what you think.
The beer is the easy part. Right?
Yeah, the beer is. Yeah. I'm not going to say the beer is the easy part, because the beer is to do it on a 7-barrel system and do it consistently is very difficult.
Yes.
I think that there are a lot of breweries that have maybe 1 or 2 great beers, and they try to do the whole kind of gamut like we do. And they'll inevitably fail at a couple of those styles. But I think really having all of those things in place. But I think on the money side, people talk about like having your budget to build out, but I think that being fully capitalized and having enough runway to survive the first 2 or 3 years, and maybe you're not profitable. That's, I think, where brewers in general have issues, and that can be like. I came from, kind of a restaurant accounting background, but I think that if you can get into a place that has low overhead, low rent, you're going to like 6% of whatever your projected sales are, somewhere in that neighborhood, you're going to be doing good. Or you at least have the shot at being good. So, but have enough money so that you can operate in the red for a few years before, you really get your footing within the community. Unless you're the only game in town, and then you can go right ahead and start making money. But it takes a while to get a following. And, even here we have a great tap room and we have a lot of street presence. And I think it's taken us, 3 years to get going. So
I mean, it looks like it's been fairly redeveloped too in the neighborhood. And
it's going to be even more redeveloped. We're going to have, a bunch of apartments that are going to be rising up around us, and to think about this place as like the local, watering hole. We like to think of ourselves as like the Cheers of Seattle, and to have that kind of community space where people can gather and people can have this be their third place is really important. And I think that people are going to gravitate towards this in the future. So it's just sticking around and making it to tomorrow.
Gentlemen, thank you both so much for your time. Like, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thanks, Aaron.
I can't thank Austin and Kevin enough for their time. Really do appreciate it, guys. And the beers were absolutely delicious. And I'm really going to have to try and schedule some time to regularly be in Seattle and just see all the great beers and they're rotating through. I can't wait to go back and visit. This episode was made possible by supporters on Patreon of this podcast. If you want to support, you can for as little as $1 an episode. Just head to patreon.com/Cascadian beer. If you haven't already, please sure you're subscribed to the podcast in your favorite podcast app. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can. You can go to facebook.com/Cascadian beer. We're on Twitter @Cascadian beer and on Instagram @Cascadian beer podcast. For more information about the breweries or, listen to some previous episodes of the podcast, you can head to the website, cascadian.beer. Thank you so much for your time for listening today. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, remember, support your local.